Good evening and welcome back to the Woodbury County Board of Supervisors Candidate Forum, brought to you by the League of Women Voters and co-sponsored by the Witt Community College Mass Media Program and the Witt Community College Journalist Program. Joining me tonight are our panelists Kristen Barnes, Teresa Weaver-Bassey, and Hannah Adamson. And we are now moving on to part 2 with our District 3 candidates, Jeremy Taylor, who is a Republican, and Marty Potabon for the Democrats. The forum, for those of you who are just joining us, will consist of opening statements by each of the candidates that are 1 minute in length. We will then turn to our panelists, who will be asking questions in turn. We will alternate which candidate goes first. They will each have 1 minute to answer the same question, and then we will move on to the next panelist for another question. At the end of the question segments, we will allow each candidate to give a 1 minute closing statement. So, gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight, and thank you for your willingness to serve our county. We're going to start with Mr. Potabon. If you would give your opening statement, please.
Thank you very much. First, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters and Western Iowa Tech for doing this. I just want to give a little history. I was born 13th of 15 kids in Remsen, Iowa. We moved to Sioux City when I was 2, and my parents taught me some valuable lessons growing up. And the first one is to give back to your community. And I've always decided that public service was my way of giving back. After I got out of the Army, I spent 18 years on the Sioux City Police Department. After an injury forced me to take a retirement, I got on the Sioux City City Council and on the Woodbury County Board of Supervisors, and I also serve as trustee for the State Police and Fire Pension Board. And I think that's part of my way of giving back, and I see all elected offices as public service. I work for the candidates. I'm not an I guy, I'm a we guy, and I think the board works as a team, and I think I'm a very good team member, and I'd like to continue doing that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor.
Well, thank you so much to the League and to Western Iowa Tech for hosting this forum tonight. I grew up here in Sioux City, and this is my hometown right here in Woodbury County, and I'm the son of 2 lifelong educators who also taught me that service was something that you are expected to give back to. And so I not only was student council president at West High, but moved on to the legislature and was twice elected to the County Board of Supervisors. I'm running in District 3 after a residency change in which hindsight's 2020 might have handled differently, but I'm passionate about this community. I'm passionate because I have much left to give to improve county government, and I want to see the progress that we made the past 5 years continue. And frankly, I was asked to run, saying that we can do better from this district and that we can continue the progress to lower taxes, to partner with our business community, and to make sure that we can continue to serve the people and the working families of Woodbury County.
Thank you. We're now going to turn to our panelists, and we're going to start with Hannah Adamson, who's the KCAU 9 news anchor. I should mention that KCAU 9 is also hosting us on their website, so you can tune in to watch the video there as well as the Western Iowa Tech TV website. So thank you for participating, and then go ahead and ask your first question, Ms. Adamson, and we'll direct your first question to Mr. Taylor.
Mr. Taylor, one of the biggest projects in the works for the county is the $50 million Woodbury County Law Enforcement Center. Are you happy with the way the project is moving forward, and would you have done or do anything differently?
I am happy with the way that the project is moving forward. I would like to say that this started with looking at long-term planning, and that was something that for 30 years went by the wayside, which is the reason that we had a jail that was built in 1987 for 90 inmates, now in disrepair. We have to make sure that we have long-term facility plans in all of our facilities. The county jail needs to be built right, and so I sat and actually formed the committee to have that kind of oversight. And by doing so, we identified with a project management group that ultimately we would need this $50 million jail. I'll also make sure that we have taxpayer protections and provisions that if federal inmate revenue isn't timely and doesn't come in, that we protect taxpayers and working families. That's very critical. Otherwise, it will be one of the most massive tax increases that the county has seen. And so with that, I am happy with the progress thus far, but it's going to take the kind of oversight that was lacking the 3 decades previous to us taking the board in 2015.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Mr. Potabon, will you answer the same question, please?
Yeah, I'm happy with the way it's going forward. back in 87, actually 85 through 87, when I was on the police department, I was on what they called the Labor Management Committee, and we were looking at building a joint city-county facility, which to this day I still wish had happened. Unfortunately, at that time, politics got in the way. We had a sheriff and a chief of police who didn't like each other. Therefore, they wouldn't cooperate with it. So instead of having what we have now, where we have a 30-year-old building that should still be standing, but it's worthless because of poor management and politics getting in the way. During the building of our current jail, they decided to cut some funds during the construction. It was designed to be able to build up 2 stories up. Well, that couldn't happen because they saved money during the construction and didn't go as far down with the footings as they would have had to save short-term money at that time, which is now costing us $50 million. But I am happy the way it's going forward. I just want to see that we stay under budget and that we do it right this time and the politics don't get involved.
Thank you. Ms. Weaver-Basie, will you please direct your next question to Mr. Potabon?
Mr. Potabom, if elected, what are your top 3 priorities?
My top 3, the first one is one when I came on this board that I wanted to see, and that's to fix the roads out in the county. The gravel roads are terrible. During the spring, nobody can drive on them. We have school buses trying to get that have to take detours around them. And I want to make sure we get that done. Unfortunately, right now it's being stalled in the courts, so we can't get the project going that we have. My second one we've talked about is the jail, to make sure that it gets done right, not politically, but it gets done and we let the experts build it the way they should, and that we watch the money to make sure that we come in under budget. And the third one I'd like to do is just to make sure that we understand that the county board is a board of team. It's a group of people that work together to do things. I think county is right now in a pretty good spot. I think we've moved pretty well forward, and I'd like to see that continue by having the teamwork on the board.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor?
3 priorities. First, we need to have high-quality services with a pro-growth agenda. There's a reason that I've been endorsed by the Siouxland Chamber of Commerce. They knew coming into 2015 that they needed someone who was going to cooperate with the business community. And so I've done so in terms of seeking to lower the tax levy, and that's happened a record 4 years in a row. The second one is lower taxes on working families. We're in a time of instability. And so making sure that families have more in their budget is critical. I put forward plans time and again, including $28 million in property tax relief the next 20 years. And county roads and long-term plans are critical as well. This is where I believe my opponent and I are different. He's put one item on in over 150 meetings, and it would have increased property taxes to the tune of over $10 million. That was the solution. We rejected that as a board. And we actually have a plan to borrow against future CF revenue. That was my plan that was put forward and supported on the board. And we need to be able to create these high-quality services and yet keep the levy low.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
Thank you.
Ms. Barnes, would you please direct your question to Mr. Taylor?
Mr. Taylor, how would you oversee the operation of the new jail to ensure that the ongoing balance between facility maintenance and operations compared to other priorities in the budget?
I think it's critical to have communication. That's why I came forward with a long-term facilities plan. We brought in a project management group, and they identified things all over our county buildings. We became the first all-LED lit county in the state of Iowa from those long-term facility plans. We closed Prairie Hills, which was set to cost $1.2 million in energy waste over the next 10 years' time. We moved the kitchen down to the jail. These challenges and issues come up on a daily basis right now in this 1987 facility. We need to have labor management meetings. That's something that had gone by the wayside when I was chair in 2016. We met with CWA, the Correctional Officers Union, who endorsed me in 2014 and 2018 because they know that I communicate well. And so we need to identify the needs that are going on currently and to make sure that we are planning for the future in a long-term and productive manner.
Thank you. Mr. Potabon?
What we need to do with the jail, first of all, like I talked earlier, is during the construction is to make sure it gets done right, keep the politics out of it. And after that, it's going to take teamwork. It's going to take teamwork between the board, the sheriff, who is an elected official, will be basically running the facility, and the employees that work there. We have to make sure that everybody's on the same team. Like I said before, I'm a we guy, I'm not an I guy. And I don't care who gets the credit. I want to make sure that we get this thing up, we get it done right. I spent 18 years in law enforcement. The need for a new jail is tragic right now because we're holding our breath that nothing happens to the old facility while we try to get this new one built. But the main thing is we have to have the teamwork in order to keep it going. The new sheriff, Chad Sheehan, is a great guy. I think he'll do a terrific job. And I guess he's not the new sheriff yet, but he will be here soon. And I think he'll work well with the board. I know how cooperative Chad can be, and I think it'll be a good management team between everybody working together.
Thank you. And Ms. Adamson, will you please direct your question to Mr. Potabon?
So, Mr. Potabom, considering that county road and gravel road projects could cost the county millions of dollars over the next several years, where is the county at regarding those roads that need to be fixed? And if elected, how would you move things forward?
Trying to move it forward as quickly as we can. That was a program that was going to start this year. We were going to sell the bonds based on the revenue from the TIF district. Unfortunately, there was a lawsuit filed. The Sergeant Bluff Luton School District filed a suit against the board telling us that we can't use TIF money for that in the way we are. We disagree with that, of course, as in most lawsuits. The two sides don't agree on what's going on. But that court case isn't going to come up till January. So this whole year, this year that we had started, that we'd hoped to be putting gravel down, will be wasted. Hopefully we'll get it going next year. Our engineer says it's going to take him 5 years. I've talked to him several times. I told him I said 3. I'm hoping we get a good compromise and that we will make up the 1 year that we're losing this year, because they're terrible and they need to be fixed, and they need to be fixed now. But unfortunately, legality got in the way and we have to wait till the lawsuit is finished.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor?
So I agree with Mr. Potabom on the assessment of where we're at right now. So I'll move past that to the spring thaw the year before last was one of the worst on record. We were responsive to our county rural residents. I put forward a plan, again, that the board supported, which dedicated $6.7 million of minimum valuation, which will come online through CF Industries revenue. The board supported that. Mr. Potabom came forward again with what would have been a $10 million property tax increase paid by county residents over 5 years' time. It would have been the largest property tax increase in 30 years. We rejected that. The next week, I came back and I proposed borrowing not against property taxpayers, who are already strapped too much at this point, but against future CF Industries revenue, which is going to come online at about $56 million over the next 20 years. The board supported that measure. That, again, is something I would differentiate, is that we need leadership, we need solutions, instead of going back to property taxpayers yet again.
Thank you. And we'll go to Ms. Weaver-Basie, and will you please direct your question to Mr. Taylor?
Mr. Taylor, how will you work to earn the trust of the voters from the entire county?
I think by doing what I've done over the last 5 years, by being responsive. When we came into office, I worked in a bipartisan way with a great Democrat, Mark Monson, with Matthew Ung, and we answered the call for change from the Taxpayers Research Conference, from the Journal, for those who were looking for a change in county government. One of the many things that we initiated was moving meeting times so that more people could come after work, live streaming them on YouTube, as I'm thankful you're doing today, meeting in every rural area as we did under my chairmanship in 2016. And we also are responsive to our county residents in the rural areas. When Siouxland paramedics went away, there was the old either-or adage of either increase property taxes or lose paramedic coverage. I said there's a third and another way. And so we looked at our other areas, we reduced FTEs elsewhere, and today we have county-wide paramedic coverage for our rural residents. That, again, is something I led on, and I'm proud to have supported.
Thank you.
Well, the first thing I would say to get the trust of the residents, never lie to them. And that'll never happen out of my mouth. One of the things my parents taught me is you don't lie to people. And I won't do that. The other thing is to make sure that everybody knows that there's an open and honest and transparent dialogue going on. And I've talked to a lot of the residents in the county, either one-on-one or in groups, and we're trying to make this all a team effort. And part of that team involves the citizens. That's who we work for. We're elected by the citizens. That's who we work for. That's who pays us. And if we're not willing to work with them, then we've lost them already. But the main thing, like I said, was always work with them. They have to know that when we talk to them, that what we're telling them is the truth. And I would never lie to the citizens in Woodbury County.
Thank you. Ms. Barnes, will you direct your question to Mr. Potabom, please?
Mr. Potabom, in regard to COVID-19, what do you think the greatest challenge to the county will be in the future? For instance, what about the funding of Siouxland District Health?
I think COVID-19 is going to give a lot of challenges to a lot of different government agencies. Siouxland District Health, first of all, is doing a great job. We've met with Kevin quite often. He comes in and talks to our board meetings. But I think the biggest thing about COVID is we don't know for sure yet what's going to happen with the tax askings. We'll find that out in November because businesses are hurting. They're out there hurting, and we don't know for sure how that's going to affect the county. We did just get lucky, got a little over $1 million in the CARES Act money, which we decided to put right into our fund off to the side so that we don't use it unless we absolutely need it. It's sort of like when you budget at home. You don't budget for all your wants, you budget for your needs, and then you work from there. But COVID is just a unique animal that we're going to all have to go forward from, and it's going to be a challenge.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor?
Marty and I don't agree on everything, but we do agree on this. Kevin Green does a great job. Siouxland District Health is doing great yeoman's work in this effort. And so I think that therein lies our greatest challenge is Siouxland District Health, their amount of funding, and the focus that they're likely having to take from other areas. They do everything from well to restaurant inspections to keeping this community safe in a way that is really behind the scenes. But I think one of the best kept secrets. So we're going to have to look at their funding. We're going to have to look at stability for small businesses and working families. One of the things that I put forward that I think is going to be critical, we have all of these needs, a $50 million jail, $10 million or more on the county roads. We have other courthouse infrastructure projects. That's going to take a lot of money. One of the things that we have to keep in mind is where is that money coming from? It's coming from taxpayers. My plan dedicates $28 million of CF Industries revenue to property tax relief, and I believe that will help small businesses and working families also have stability during these challenging times.
Thank you. Ms. Adamson, will you please direct your question to Mr. Taylor?
Well, Mr. Taylor, going back on a prior question, Woodbury County will soon have a new jail and a new sheriff, essentially starting off on a clean slate. How do you see the relationship between the Sheriff's Department and the Board of Supervisors developing?
I think very well. I have long admired Chad Sheehan. We actually worked together at North High School, where he was a liaison officer and I was a teacher. This is one of the problems pre-2015. If you remember, my opponent had attempted to unseat Sheriff Dave Drew. After being unsuccessful, the board at that time appointed him in charge of courthouse security. We ran, in no small part, on returning that to the sheriff's office. We thought it was the wrong thing to do, wrong thing to be a part of. Once we have established a good relationship with our sheriff, which I have with Sheriff Dave Drew and would plan to have with Sheriff Chad Sheehan, we need to listen. He's an elected official, elected separately from us, and he needs to let us know what funding needs he has. I've been very proud to have been a part of adding necessary jail equipment for our correctional officers, of supporting our law enforcement by making sure that their families are covered during a line of duty death, and making sure that I have a good communicative, cooperative relationship with our sheriff, which I would plan to continue to do.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Mr. Potabom?
Well, the good thing is we're going to be able to work together with no problem. First of all, I worked with both Sheriff Drew and Sheriff Sheehan when I was on the police department. And I hate to give the difference from our ages, but Mr. Sheehan was a student at East when I was the liaison officer out there. So I've known Chad for a long time. And I don't think there'll be any problem with work relations, just like there isn't with Sheriff Drew. Dave was one of my good friends, and we've been friends for years, and we've never let politics get in the middle of that, nor will we ever, at least from my side, and I'm sure Dave's the same way. But I think it's going to be a good team. I think I keep on calling him Officer Sheehan, it's Chad Sheehan, Sheriff Sheehan, is a great communicator. He's a good problem solver, and I think he'll just be a very valuable asset to the team, and it'll be a team. And that's the good thing, is I know that we can all work together, and we can do what we need to do for the good of the citizens out in the county, because again, that's who we work for, is the people that pay the taxes.
Thank you. Ms. Weaver-Basie, would you please direct your next question to Mr. Potabom?
Mr. Potabom, have you ever attended a diversity training or poverty simulation workshop? And would you consider asking that such trainings be held for the supervisors and other county employees? Please explain.
It was under a different name back when I attended. When I was on the police department, we had training on how to work with different groups. that was a long time ago, and the world has changed since then. So yes, I would absolutely support having that training for all all employees of the county, especially in the world we live in today. With the divisiveness that we have now, I think anything we can do to learn about what people who are different from us are having to do and what they have to put up with is going to be nothing but beneficial, both to our employees and to the citizens of Woodbury County. So I would be supportive, and I think it should start with the supervisors. I think it'd be a valuable training both for the poverty and for the ethnicity to have training that we know what people are going through. Because a lot of times, you know, you may hear about the problems, but you really don't know what the problems are until you get a chance to sit down and have an open, honest communication with them. So I would definitely support those.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor?
Potentially. I have gone through some diversity training as a younger man in life. I haven't done the poverty simulation, but I lived in Vietnam with a family of 11, so I feel like I've lived it rather than simulating it. So with that, I do believe any experience or training that we can provide that increases collaboration and communication is very valuable. When we came into what I call the new board in 2015, answering those calls for changes, training was something that we put a high priority on, from providing that and funding for the sheriff's office when needed to evaluating our department heads and performance reviews, which had gone by the wayside. So I'm very much a fan of making sure that we have professional development, department head meetings. We borrowed from the school district on their way of professional communications. And so any training that improves our county employees is something that I would be supportive of.
Thank you. And Ms. Barnes, would you direct your question to Mr. Taylor, please?
Mr. Taylor, Woodbury County is asking for a little over $1.3 million in COVID cost reimbursement for the CARES Act. How do you intend to ensure that this reimbursement money is distributed fairly among the communities in the county?
It's a great question. So I think that we need to make sure that those who are the purveyors of those funds, if those go through Siouxland District Health, they have their own separately diverse elected board of folks, of which one member of the Board of Supervisors sits. So I think making sure that we're adhering to any state and federal guidelines is very important. I think that making sure that we are really putting the funds to where they're most needed, whether that's in health coverage costs or in making sure that we have increased testing. Also looking at ways that we can educate the public. That's something that Siouxland District Health does a great job of, whether that's through their regular communications. I just received their newsletter yesterday, or through educating our leaders, whether it's in the school system or the private sector. I can remember Kevin Green sitting down with Chris McGowan and having a shared forum, those being shared virtually. So I think having those public-private partnerships, making sure Siouxland District Health has that oversight, and that we look at where it's best and most appropriate to be funded.
Thank you. Mr. Potabom?
Yeah, and I agree with a lot what he said, because that money, like I said before, we don't know what the tax askings are going to come in. The revenues are going to come in November. So that money shouldn't be just handed out. It's got to be any department head or elected official that actually has something they need because of the COVID should be able to come forward and ask for it, and that's how we should divide that up. It's not going to be just a wish list. Okay, I want to add to my budget for any of the elected officials. Actually, we've already contacted them all and told them that this money is not going to be just evenly distributed and everybody gets a percentage. It's going to be put on a as needed basis. But we're going to wait and see what the county's situation is before any of that money starts to get divided up, because we don't know for sure where it's going to be needed. Like you was talking about, district health may need more than, say, the sheriff's department does. So we're going to have to wait and see and then divide it up on a need basis.
Thank you. Ms. Adamson, will you please direct your question to Mr. Potabom?
Mr. Potabom, do you feel the county has done enough regarding COVID health protocols? And if not, what more could they possibly do?
Personally, no, I don't think we have. First of all, because of the governor's proclamation, we're kind of handcuffed in what we can do. But I've asked earlier on, I thought we should have had a mask mandate at the courthouse. Some of the elected officials do. And you'll see at the meetings, I wear mine, simply because we're nowhere near 6 feet apart up there at our table. Everybody in the crowd has to be 6 feet, but we're not. So I think, especially when you're looking at leaders and when you're in a pandemic like we are now, the citizens look to the leaders to see what direction you're going to go. And if we're given a bad example from our spot, I don't think it comes out right. But I think the city council, I think, did a good thing. They did as far as they could when they passed the resolution encouraging people to wear masks, because you can't put any more teeth in it than that. But I think something along that line, or like I said, I would have preferred a mask mandate in the courthouse for anyone coming in to be wearing one.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor?
Yeah, I think the county's done a very good job in utilizing the resources that they have at this point. Again, Siouxland District Health has done great work in terms of really keeping the public up to date with what can be done. So I don't have any things that I would point to that the county should have done this or done that differently in terms of Siouxland District Health's response. In terms of mandating outside in public areas, I know that that's been a push and pull between different municipalities, counties, and the governor's office. I'm not someone who is asking for countywide and public spaces especially, but I do believe that where it's applicable, we can't socially distance, then we do need to lead by example and to be helpful and protective.
Thank you. We will now have time for our closing statements, and you each have 1 minute to give a closing statement. Mr. Taylor, since Mr. Potabom went first at the opening, you can go first on the closing.
Well, thank you very much for having us here tonight and for this opportunity. I believe that this is about hard work, real results, and leadership. That's why I stepped forward, and that's why I've received the support of the Siouxland Chamber of Commerce, many of our rural mayors who know that I'll work hard for them, and working families. When I see an issue or a problem, I step forward and want to serve. So for example, when a law enforcement officer lost his life in the line of duty, and I found out his family's health insurance coverage would be lost, I stepped forward. And today, no Woodbury County officer or deputy who loses his or her life in the line of duty will have the family's health insurance gone. So I step forward. I want to lead in long-term planning. I want to have that spirit of cooperation that's so important with the city and with the business community. That's how we are starting to grow right now. There's much left to be done, and for me, it's about service. That's what's brought me into the chaplaincy, into the Army National Guard, and as somebody who's a father of 6 kids and a wonderful wife, I want to give back to my hometown and to continue to serve and lead, and would be honored to have your support.
Thank you. Mr. Potabom?
Thank you very much. And again, I want to thank you for having us out here. I appreciate this. The one thing I want to put up, and I said it in my opening statement, I believe that elected officials are public servants and that this is public service. And that's what my whole adult life has been, is public service. I want to make sure that we work as a team. Like I said, I'm not an I guy, I'm a we guy. I want to see results, and I don't care who gets credit for them. I just want to see the results get done. And the one thing I'll always promise, and I said it a couple times here tonight to the citizens of Woodbury County, is if you ask me a question, I will never lie to you. What I tell you will be honest, transparent, and I'll tell you the truth. We may not always agree, and that's the one good thing about politics locally compared to some of our national things, is that we can disagree and hopefully do it in a professional manner. But that's all I want to tell the people in the county is I'll work hard for you and I'll never lie to you. And I appreciate your vote on November 3rd. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you both for being here. Thank you for participating in our forum, and thank you most of all for your service to our community. We appreciate your willingness to serve. We will now have a brief intermission once again as we switch over from our District 3 candidates to our District 5 candidates. And we hope that you will join us for the final segment of our debate after about a 10-minute break. Thank you.